The term ace gets thrown around a lot when you're talking about pitching. It's one of those things that most fans have a general idea of what it means to be an ace, but no one can really agree on exactly what it takes and who is an ace. MLB.com says that an ace typically refers to a team's number one pitcher, but if we just want to take a little look across the league real quick, Kyle Muller was the opening day starter for Oakland last year, and I think we can all agree that dude's not an ace. Sorry, Kyle. So it's not just about being the best pitcher on your staff. Nowadays, ace tends to get used more like the rest of MLB.com's definition. It can also be used to describe an elite pitcher in general. But this is where all the arguments about who's an ace and who's not start, because what does it actually mean for a pitcher to be elite, and how many true aces are there in MLB? There's an article on Fangraphs from 2016 written by Jeff Sullivan, where thousands of people picked whether they thought the top pitchers at the time were aces or not, and the consensus was that there were about 20 starting pitchers across Major League Baseball that most people would call an ace. So you'd think that that would probably be about the same today then, right? But what if I told you that there were less than you thought? Like, way less. In my mind, it takes a lot for a starting pitcher to be a true ace. That 1A kind of pitcher that'll put the team on his back, and you can trust the fact that he's gonna take you deep into games and shut down the opposing lineup every 5 days. Now, there are a lot of guys that are close, but I'd call them more of a 1B right now. And a good amount of those could be an ace very soon, but I'm here to make the argument that in Major League Baseball right now, there are only 5 starting pitchers that I would call a true ace. So what sets these guys apart from the rest? Because there's a lot of guys that you watch them pitch and go, yeah, that's an ace, that dude's special. Well, it starts with exactly that. Having the kind of stuff that other pitchers just simply don't. And that can be just a 2 or 3 pitch mix that sets them apart. If you have those kind of pitches that hitters struggle to hit even when they know it's coming, Mariano Rivera's cutter. When you know how to use those, they can be deadly weapons for you on the mound, and they can help you out of some real tough spots. One of the things that I think sets a true ace apart from other pitchers is he doesn't always have to rely on his defense to help him out. When push comes to shove and you find yourself in a tough spot with runners in scoring position, less than 2 outs, they can work themselves out of trouble by leaning on these pitches to get a big strikeout or 2.
I'll do it myself.
Now, you have your defense behind you for a reason, and the name of the game as a pitcher is to get outs. They don't all have to be strikeouts to be an ace, but there are moments in a game where just a productive out, it ends up costing you a run. So being able to keep the ball out of play and strand that guy on base is something that sets these guys with swing and miss stuff apart from the rest of the league. So this is where guys like Logan Webb, George Kirby, and Justin Steele just don't quite make it. They tend to pitch to contact more, they don't get quite as many strikeouts, and even worse, they give up a higher average than a lot of these other guys because they're more worried about throwing strikes than throwing something that's hard for the batter to hit. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still very good pitchers and they're efficient so they can give you a lot of innings. But since they're lighting up the strike zone almost too much, they rely on their defense a lot more than these other pitchers, and I'd like to see them risk throwing some balls if that means that they're getting weaker contact, more swings and misses, and more strikeouts. Webb is still looking for that real swing and miss pitch, probably needs to tweak his breaking ball. Steele has a good slider but doesn't throw the hardest, so maybe developing a fastball with more movement like a sinker or a 2-seamer, and Kirby has the kind of stuff that I think he absolutely could make this change. That man just has a phobia of throwing balls. It's okay, George. I know it wasn't a strike. I'm still proud of you. Now, on top of having those devastating pitches that give hitters nightmares, to be able to rely on those pitches in those crucial moments of a game, you kinda need to know where they're going. Having the best pitches in the world is great, and it's gonna let you get away with a couple mistakes that you probably shouldn't be able to. But you're facing the best hitters in the world. It doesn't matter how good a pitch is. If you make enough mistakes with it, these guys will make you pay for it. Missing your spots can cost you in a couple different ways as a pitcher. One being that if you keep missing out of the zone when you're trying to throw a strike, you're costing yourself extra pitches left and right that are going to keep you from going as deep into games as you could. But that's the least of your worries with bad command. What you're really worried about is hurting yourself and putting pressure on your defense by walking guys. A walk here and there isn't the worst thing in the world if they don't go anywhere, but all it takes is one big hit at the wrong time, especially if you just walked a couple guys, and now you're giving up a run or more that shouldn't even be out there in the first place. But the worst mistake that a lack of command cost you is leaving a pitch in the wrong spot to the wrong hitter at the wrong time. And especially with these guys that throw hard, all it takes is one bad pitch, and you're watching that guy jog around the bases with fireworks going off. These guys with great stuff but shaky command, they're absolutely unhittable when everything's going right. But they can be really inconsistent, especially year to year. And these guys can't all turn into Rick Vaughn. Instead, we get Blake Snell and Dylan Cease. Both of these guys have some of the best stuff in baseball, but no idea where it's going. Both ranking near the bottom in walk percentage and location plus. And this is why it's so hard to know what you're gonna get from them. When both of these guys are on, they've been some of the best pitchers in the league. Cease finished second in AL Cy Young voting last year, and Snell is coming off his second Cy Young award. But Cease's ERA more than doubled this year, and Snell's ERA has jumped up and down throughout his career. This inconsistency from self-inflicted mistakes is why I can't rely on these guys to be an ace every year. And being able to rely on having your ace there when you need him leads us to the last ability, and that's availability. It's no secret that across baseball, starting pitchers are throwing less and less innings. Between analytics and strategy having more and more managers keeping their starters from seeing lineups for a third time, and from the rise in injuries as pitchers keep throwing harder. As great as a pitcher may be, that talent means jack shit if that guy's sitting on the bench, in the training room, or down in the minors on a rehab assignment. You want your best pitchers staying on the mound, and that's a skill that's becoming harder and harder to find. It wasn't that long ago that 200 innings in a season was the benchmark for a full year. In 2013, there were 36 pitchers that went at least 200 innings, enough for every team in MLB to have one. But that number steadily dropped since then, and this year, there were only 5. In 2023, there were only about 30 pitchers that went 170 innings with at least an average ERA for a starter, and there were only 20 that did that over 180 innings. So being able to throw a lot of innings effectively is getting nearly impossible to find, which just makes it even more valuable when you do have that guy. Having a pitcher that you know every time he's just scheduled to pitch, he's gonna be ready to go, and you've got a great chance to win because that guy's gonna go at least 7 innings and he's gonna keep the other team from scoring. Man, you're jacked to go play behind that guy. Let alone then when one guy can throw that many innings for you, that's taking a lot of extra innings off your bullpen arms, who don't have to come in the 5th or the 6th inning. It keeps them fresher so they've got more to give you when they do pitch, and they're not gonna gas out as the season goes on. Even in today's game of starters pitching less, this is still something that's insanely important and takes a lot of guys out of the discussion. Because as great as guys like Tyler Glasnow, Carlos Rodon, Clayton Kershaw, Shohei Ohtani, and Jacob deGrom, who's the best pitcher on the planet when he's healthy, it's exactly that. When they're healthy. Rodon is the only one of these guys that's managed to make 30 starts in any season over the last 3 years, so let alone you can't really rely on any of these guys to pitch a full season for you. A lot of these guys have had years where they haven't even been making 20 starts. So if I'm gonna call you a true ace, the 1A of any pitching staff, you have to have the kind of stuff that's gonna help you make your defense's job easy and get the job done on your own at times. You gotta be able to command it and really pitch with it to avoid mistakes you don't need to be making. And I have to rely on the fact that you're gonna be that same pitcher year in and year out for the whole season. And in my mind, there are only 5 guys that have proved over at least the last 2 years, preferably 3, that they are that guy. Garrett Cole, Kevin Gausman, Zach Wheeler, Spencer Strider, and Zach Gallen. The first and obvious one here is Garrett Cole. And when you want to talk about an absolute workhorse, that's Cole. Since 2017, this dude has made over 30 starts and gone over 200 innings every full year except 2021, where he still made 30 starts and went over 180 innings. After getting traded to the Astros, 2018 was where he took off. He's racked up well over 200 strikeouts every full season since then, with over 300 in 2019, while also keeping the walks down and giving up almost no hits. The only thing you can really knock him for is giving up homers at times, but when you throw as hard as he does at the top of the zone, if you get the barrel to it, there's only one place that ball's going, especially in Yankee Stadium. Out of 164 qualified starting pitchers since 2018, he ranks 6th in ERA, 5th in FIP, 4th in strikeout percentage and whip, and 1st in FWAR. He's been a 5-time All-Star, finished 2nd in Cy Young voting twice, and won it this year. He's an ace. The only thing he can't do is cover his ass in a press conference.
You ever use spider tap while pitching?
I don't.
Kevin Gausman had an up and down start to his career after being the Orioles' 4th overall pick in 2012, but 2020 with the Giants was where he really started to put it all together. Then in 2021, he proved that he'd become the ace pitcher that he's been since then, making over 30 starts each of the last 3 years, averaging over 180 innings per season, going over 190 in 2021. He's been over 200 strikeouts all 3 of these years, hovering around a 30% strikeout rate, while keeping the walks and the homers down as well. The one knock on Gausman is that he has given up some hits, but most of this was in 2022 when he allowed a 270 average, but he also cut his walks down an insane amount that year, so it looks like he tried to change his approach a bit and attack the strike zone more, and after this didn't quite work out how he thought, he readjusted back and he's been fine again. He's been a 2-time All-Star, finished 3rd in the AL Cy Young voting this year, and out of 95 qualified starters over the last 3 years, ranks 13th in ERA, but 10th in strikeout percentage, 2nd in FWAR and FIP minus, and led the league in FIP. Zach Wheeler hit the ground running to start his career with the Mets, but he ended up tearing his UCL just before the start of the 2015 season and needed Tommy John. He had a handful of setbacks during his recovery and struggled when he finally returned in 2017, but put up 2 more good seasons before the Mets let him walk. And since signing a 5-year, $118 million deal with the Phillies, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, especially over the last 3 years. Since 2021, he's been everything you want out of a pitcher. A guy with high strikeout stuff that doesn't give up walks, hits, or homers. He did miss some time in 2022, but still managed 150 innings, and I can look past this when he's managed to stay healthy since coming back from Tommy John, and he went over 210 innings in 2021 when he was an All-Star and finished 2nd in Cy Young voting. Over the last 3 years, he's led 95 qualified starting pitchers in FWAR and FIP minus, ranked 2nd in FIP, 7th in walk percentage, and 8th in homers per 9 and ERA minus. Now these guys have proved over the last 3 years that they're for sure aces, but the next 2 have done enough in the last 2 years that I feel confident they're gonna keep it up. And there's a lot that says that Spencer Strider is about to ball out if he keeps this up. Talking about starting pitchers, according to Stuff Plus, Strider has the best fastball and just stuff in the game and is in a league of his own when it comes to strikeouts. He absolutely dominates lineups, finishing this year with 281 strikeouts and allowing a sub-200 average over the last 2 years combined. He improved on the walks this year but gave up more homers as a result, and he's only had 1 full season as a starter, but in that season he was an All-Star and finished 4th in Cy Young voting in what a lot of people called a down year for him, and seeing what he's been able to do in over 300 innings the last 2 years, this guy's insane talent speaks for itself. In the last 2 years, he's led all pitchers with over 300 innings in strikeout percentage, FIP, and FIP minus by a lot, ranked 2nd in average allowed, 5th in whip, and 6th in homers per 9. While his ERA is only ranked 16th and he has been average at best at giving up walks, He does actually have solid command according to Location Plus, so a slight change to how he approaches at-bats could help with the walks, and this is where Strider is kind of the exception to the rules, because he still doesn't allow any base runners, and he's had the worst difference between his FIP and ERA the last 2 years, which means he's probably gotten pretty unlucky, and a couple big hits at the wrong time have just really cost him. Plus, it's my fucking list, I can do what I want.
Whatever, I'll do what I want.
And our last ace is Zach Gallen, drafted in the 3rd round in 2016 by the Cardinals, then traded to the Marlins in the Marcell Ozuna trade, and again to the Diamondbacks for Jazz Chisholm. He showed a lot of promise after debuting in 2019 and again in 2020, then struggled through injuries in 2021. But since then, he's finished top 5 in Cy Young voting the last 2 years and made his first All-Star team this year. Gallen does it all as a pitcher, mainly keeping the hits and homers to a minimum, but he's got a full repertoire of nasty pitches that can get him strikeouts, and he's continued improving at cutting down the walks throughout his career. Over the last 2 years, he's ranked 3rd in ERA and ERA minus, 4th in WHIP, and 5th in FIP, homers per 9, and average allowed, and he's proved this over nearly 400 innings, making over 30 starts both seasons. So I feel pretty good about him being able to do this again, and I'm so sorry, Zach, for what I just did. Please forgive me. Now, there were a handful of guys that didn't quite make it because either I would have called them an ace before something this year made me question it, or I think they could be an ace here in the next year or two, but they just aren't quite there yet. First, you have the guys like Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer that have pitched like bona fide aces for years, although Scherzer could also fall in that bucket of missing time recently, but both of these guys had down years this year and looked like Father Time was finally catching up to them, so their time as 2 of the best pitchers in baseball is probably over. Then you have guys like Corbin Burns and Sandy Alcantara, the NL Cy Young winners in 2021 and 2022 respectively, who both proved themselves to be aces, and if they have another great season next year, I'm throwing them right back on this list. But they each had something this year that made me a little nervous. Burns was absolutely dominant in 2021 and 2022, a sub-3 ERA, over 230 strikeouts, and above a 30% strikeout rate both years, with an average allowed under 200 while getting the walks well under control for really the first time in his career. But this year, both his strikeouts and walks were noticeably worse, and they've both been trending down since 2021, with his strikeout percentage this year the lowest since his rookie year. He was still a very good pitcher, but this regression is a little concerning for a guy that's only going into his age 29 season. And Sandy won his Cy Young in his 2nd straight year of 30 plus starts and over 200 innings. He's been more of a pitch to contact kind of guy, but he still has the kind of top end stuff to where guys can't hit him very well, and he still gets a good amount of strikeouts. But this year, about everything went wrong. He still kept the walks down, but couldn't get the same kind of strikeouts, and gave up way more hits and homers, with his ERA almost doubling from the year before. So these two guys could bounce back to being an ace again, and then there's a handful of guys that aren't that far away from cementing themselves as aces, for different reasons. First, there's Brandon Woodruff, Walker Buehler, and Shane McClanahan, who all fall into that category of needing to stay healthy, where all of these guys have flashed the ability to pitch like an ace, some of them even for a full season, but they haven't been able to stay healthy and put together back-to-back full seasons and show that they can maintain this. And then there's the guys that have stayed healthy and they've been really good, but for one reason or another, I'd call them more of a 1B, but one little tweak and they can easily be in the ace conversation. I already talked about George Kirby earlier. He's got the high-end stuff you're looking for. I just like to see him pitch around guys a bit more instead of hammering the strike zone and pitching to contact so much. Try to get some swings and misses, even if that means you end up out of the strike zone here and there. Then we have Luis Castillo, who's just right on the fringe, because every year there's been something that turns me away. 2019, he walked a ton of guys. 2021, the walks were still high and his strikeouts and hits were both worse. 2022, he was great but missed a bit of time. And 2023, he gave up way more homers. And this was his first full year out of Cincinnati, a total hitter's park, and into Seattle, a total pitcher's park. And finally, Framber Valdez. And I could just feel Astros fans seething this whole time for not mentioning him.
I can feel your anger.
He's put up great ERAs over the last 3 years, but he's another guy that's at the bottom of the league in terms of command. So even though he has high-end stuff and his strikeouts and walks have both improved since 2021, this lack of command kind of keeps both of those from really being as good as they could be. So if he just gets a little more command, especially on his cutter and his curve, which are nasty, this dude could be dangerous. It takes a lot to be a true ace in my book, the real 1A pitchers that would be at the top of any rotation, and I think it should be that way because throwing around ace to any pitcher that's good kind of just takes away from it. And that's coming from the guy that grievously misused the word dynasty in some of my video titles, so I had to learn that lesson the hard way. There really aren't that many pitchers that can really do everything, or even most of everything, and I'm sure anytime that you make a list like this that everyone's happy with it and agrees with what I just said. So if there's anyone you think should have been called an ace, or if you want separate videos on certain guys or types of pitchers that I mentioned, leave a comment and let me know. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and then you can check out our latest video next right here about how the LA Angels were a complete disaster this year. And when they wanted to prove to Shohei Ohtani that he should stay, everything that could have gone wrong did. Thanks again for watching and supporting the channel. Have an awesome day. Later.